Welcome back to the ESM podcast. I'm so thankful that you've joined. Today's episode is sponsored by Tyler Kane with Statewide Mortgage. He's a senior loan officer with 20 years of experience in helping people with their home mortgage needs. Whether you're a first-time buyer, looking to refinance, or just want to discuss future home ownership goals, give Tyler a call, 813-380-8487. Or you can set up an appointment at his website, which is provided in the show notes. It just does not get any better than Christians helping Christians. Speaking of which, thank you again for being here with me. Let's get started. Welcome. Thanks for joining today. I want to begin right here at the start and tell you exactly where we're going and how all of this came together. This particular episode today is quite personal and ongoing for me, real time. But I kept thinking that maybe what I'm growing in is exactly the thing that you want to be growing in. So we're going to talk about your relationship with God today. We're going to talk about marriage, your relationship with family, and how to improve and invest in all of those things. So let me walk you through how all this came together real time. Summer and I, my wife, we've been talking a lot lately about our marriage and the good times and things that we can work on. If the good Lord wills it, on November 29th of this year, we will have been married for 29 years, and I would say it's been good. I would say it's been really good, and I think for the most part, she would agree. But just like any married couple, we have our moments. We have moments where we feel disconnected, where there's some tension that can lead to outbursts, just like, I presume, everyone else. But almost always, it's the same thing. In some way or capacity, she feels forgotten. She feels overlooked or marginalized. She feels like she is not the most important person or thing that exists under the sun in this life to me. And on my end, when I hear that, I think, no, that's not true. You are that thing. Behind only my allegiance to God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, you are this constant in my life. And so you can already hear it. First of all, when she expresses this forgottenness, I immediately come back and say, what you're feeling is not true. That is not the way that I feel, which isn't exactly the best way to make reparations. But being a man, I always go farther and begin to justify myself. Well, I know the last few weeks you felt like I haven't noticed you and we haven't spent much time together, but... And what do I fill in for there? Well, I talk about my life as a worker. I have a lot of work going on. There's a lot of correspondence in what I do with people, a lot of creating things, which can have its ebbs and flows, and producing materials. There is, at certain times of year, a lot of travel. And so I'm coming to her and I'm saying, no, you really are super important to me. You are this constant in my life. However, you have to understand that I feel that way even when you don't feel that way. And there are things that are just demanding my attention that are creating the current turmoil. And while there is some truth in that, I guess, especially from my perspective, none of it is a real owning up to the fact that I am not consistently prioritizing or portraying my love for her in a way that connects and makes her feel it. And when she does feel remembered and prioritized and central, when I look back over my life, all of the rest of it works out even better. But I've been too busy defending myself. So I started trying to figure out what's going on. I'm a super conceptual guy. I have to come up with almost an imagery for it or an example to grab onto so that I can see what's happening and hopefully make real tangible changes. And so the big thing that happened for me when she and I were not walking and talking together and I was off thinking about this on my own in a doghouse in the backyard, no, not really, I started to recognize that what she is talking about sounds familiar because I've run through very similar things when it comes to my relationship with God. And I've had to make super tangible, intentional, physical changes in order to make God more central to my life instead of just saying that He is central to my life. Because here's what happens with God, and I think you would be right here with me. You would say God is the most important thing in my life. He's a part of everything that I do. He is with me in every place that I go. There's not a single thing I'm involved in or focused in or carrying out that He's not wrapped all around. And from my perspective, it sounds like I'm saying God is super important. I have this full day and all these things that I'm doing, and I won't think much about Him or address Him much or run first through pleasing him, but he's always there. He's in the car with me. He's wherever I'm going. And so he has this ongoing respect. And from my perspective, it sounds like I'm complimenting him. Like, God, doesn't it mean something to you that you're in the midst of every part of my life? But I don't think it comes across quite so beautifully from God's perspective. God is thinking, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and it is true. I'm with you everywhere, but it's easy to marginalize me when you feel like I'm just around you in all that you're doing and not make me more important than what you're doing. In fact, I will be forgotten until you need me, or occasionally it might pop into your mind that I am the all-present Lord, but it will not be the first thing in your mind. It may be way down the list of priorities and emphasis. And there are a couple of ways that this became clear to me, one of them kind of a physical layout I'll tell you about in a minute, but the title of today's episode is Background Music. I was treating God like background music. Do you know what I'm talking about? You go get your hair cut and there's music just playing on the radio in the background. Maybe it's true at the gym, maybe it's true where you work or in your home, and you could say of that music if someone asks you about it, oh yeah, we love that music. It's a major part of everything we have going on here at this job because it's playing 100% of the time. It's always in the room. It's always a part of what we're doing in our subconscious, in the back of our minds, and every once in a while, it even pops up and we think about it. But isn't that the way background music works? You may go a whole day without thinking about it a single time. And it's doubtful that you will go into the office or the gym and the first thing you think about is the background music and how critical it is to everything you're doing here today and how you just need to keep your mind on it while you're doing other things. Nobody does that. It's not called foreground music. It's called background. And it occurred to me that that's the way I've been thinking and worshiping on a daily basis my Lord. For me, it almost sounds good, like, oh, you're always playing. That music is always there. But from God's perspective, he's thinking, isn't that convenient? That I'm just this background tune that's here when you have your interest piqued or when you're contemplating something that demands a pause. But otherwise, I'm just not a big part of what you're doing. And so for me, some years ago, really, I started to make changes. And here was the basic change. Every single day, when possible, I need to begin the day with sacrificial, intentional, directional contact with God. I started journaling. The 3-month journal, the ESM journal, has been my vehicle for this, and I don't know how I would live without it because it just helps me to make sure that God is not just some running theme around my life. I don't even begin to live my life that day. I don't move to step 2 or embark upon any other thing until I have first checked in with God, heard from him, spoke to him, thought about him, planned the day through his pleasure, and then went out and partook of all these other things. In the journal each morning, I get to read 2 chapters, an Old Testament chapter and a New Testament chapter, and write down some of what I believe God is showing me. I get to offer 3 prayers to God. One is gratitude, where I just thank him for something. One is affirmation, where I praise him for his grace. And one is ask beautiful questions, where I can submit to him any request that I can imagine, since he can do far beyond what we can ask or think. I also get to write down a couple of things that I want to do today that I know will please him. And then from there, with God as not just the center, not just all around everything, but the very first right of approval, the day begins. Now, if you can add to that morning focus, get that big green check from God in a way that says, he and I have really made sure that we're working through this together, and then just add to that throughout the day some directional conversation where you just think about God, where you steal moments from the day and you think about him. Now, he still runs in the background. He's still always around everything and in everything, but he's not forgotten or marginalized or convenient. He is also the place where attention is turned, if just for a few moments here and there, as a check-in to remind myself that today it's about God's work in my life and me pleasing him, and every other thing must follow that. So look, I think today's podcast is about marriage, and that's where I'm heading, but I'm walking you through my process. After Summer and I had some very personal and direct conversations, I went away to pray and think and read, and my first thought was, I'm treating her a lot like I was treating God. and what I needed to do with God, for God, so that things were beautiful from His perspective, not just from mine, were pretty intentional and transformational, and I need to apply the same things to her. Now, I wanted to explain this to her, but honestly, it was about a week ago, and the whole background music thing hadn't become that seal that brought the remembrance. So I explained it to her in a little bit more of a physical way, and I'll present this to you. So this is me walking with her around the neighborhood for a couple of miles one night, trying to get her to see that I've been defensive, I've made excuses, I've let my side of things dictate your side of things, and I get it. And I get it because I've been through this before when it came to the Lord. So here's how I tried to describe it, and maybe you can see this. Imagine there's a sheet of paper, and it's turned sideways, so it's in landscape form. And on the left side, you draw a little stick figure, and that's you. And you draw an arrow to the right, so that's you proceeding throughout the day. And then you make 3 big circles. They're priorities for the day. They're things that you need to interact with, find approval with, or accomplish. And we're not even going to label what they are, but they do come in sequence. There's the first circle. That's the most important thing today that needs to be done and done well. And then once you've done that well, you can move to the second circle and then the third. And so there's a priority setting. And if someone asked me to draw that picture about my life, I think I could do it. And then if they said, where is God in the picture? I would not have put him in the first circle. I would not have said for many years, well, I walk throughout my day, and number one, I've got to check in with God, make sure He's theming everything, He gets individual attention, and then only when that's good do I move to the second thing. I do not think that's the way I would have described it, not if I'm being honest. Instead, I would have said what I believe to be a much more noble thing, even cooler than that. I would take the pencil, and at the top of the page, outside of the circles, I would draw a boundary around the entire page, and at the top I would write, God. And I would say, God isn't one of these circles. He's the whole page. I wake up, I'm in the presence of God. I go throughout the day, I live in the grace of God. He sustains me. He's near me. He endures me. Like I'm saying some amazing thing. Never mind, I can go a whole Tuesday and barely think about Him at all, or offer Him nearly nothing that is just from me to Him for His glory. But somehow I feel great about it. Because if you draw my attention to His name, I'll say, oh yeah, no, he's everything to me. He's all over everything. But from God's perspective, that's not the way He sees it. He sees it that there are 3 circles that you are laser focused on, and He is none of those. That you just assume that His presence is a healthy relationship. And so how does God feel? From my view, I felt like God felt neglected, taken for granted, marginalized, overlooked, and just something that occasionally pops up when I really need it. So that's what I presented to Summer, and then I said, babe, this is the thing. That's the way I see you. You are the most important person to me in this life, and I think of you as being written at the top of the page, that you are, in that sense, like God to me, just a constant. Always there, and I love it, a comfort level that exists in everything I do and every project I embark upon and every trip I take. You are essential in that you're just wrapped all around it, a factor in and out of it. But it's come to my realization that while that sounds like a compliment from me to you, it does not feel that way to you. And what it's become is a justification to focus on whatever's in those 3 circles. For me, that first circle a lot of times is just work. Building sermons, traveling and doing work, corresponding with people, which seems so greatly justifiable as a great first circle, especially if God and my wife are wrapped all around it. But I've come to see that that's utterly to her neglect. That from her perspective, it just feels like she's conveniently placed there as someone I can say matters, but in daily activity, she's not experiencing it. In fact, it's interesting. One of the arguments I made when I was trying to justify myself is, babe, we spend an hour or 2 every morning together drinking coffee. But if I'm being really honest about how that goes, it's usually me reading and journaling and planning and her just kind of sitting there doing some of the same things and us occasionally looking at each other, asking about our schedule. It's exactly what I'm talking about. Her presence is not the same thing as a healthy and vibrant relationship. So what do I do about that? Well, I don't want to give away all my secrets here. She tends to listen to the episodes, but we are about 2 weeks in. I wanted change that was consistent. Listen, guys, when we get pinned to the wall like this, we can manifest the 3 best days. We can do the coolest things for our wives, but I'm telling you, it only ends up making it worse if we give them all of this attention and then within a week we resign them back to some marginal place. So because our marriage is very important to me and it hurts me for her not to feel important, though to me she so incredibly is, I needed to change the way that I did the circles. Don't think of it as some name written around the page that's just kind of conveniently noted. The first circle every morning is God still. It has to be. Until I believe I'm walking in the fellowship with God and He has drawn my gaze and I have heard His words, how can I live any part of any day? But immediately after that, and sometimes running right beside it, is her. How can I make sure she knows I love her before this day gets going? How can I prioritize and note her schedule and how I can service her needs through it? I know life gets busy. We still have to go to work and do all those other things, but I can do those things with her feeling seen and important instead of just assuming that she gets it. And then, of course, some really simple things like making sure to just put my mind on her and reach out in her direction at least once a day and maybe do something once a week that's a little bit special and just get excited about the prospect of that. And what's interesting is I could go a whole day without texting her and feel as if I loved her the same as if we talked all day long. But this isn't about me, is it? Or my perception of our relationship. This is about her feeling seen and remembered and noted. And I've got to tell you, it's actually a lot of fun. It's wonderful the way that we respond to each other when we do that, and all the other things gets done. My wife is not background music. She's not this constant that's just always there and is pleasant and that I can think about every once in a while, but that ultimately, while always a part of my life, is very rarely the central piece of what I'm doing or what I'm thinking. God deserves better than that, so much more than that, and so does she. So one thing I want to do to tie all this together before we close is draw your attention to background music. You may be surprised how often you hear it throughout the day when you're places or involved with things, and anytime you're in a room for a certain amount of minutes and then you finally hear it, I want you to think about that as a trigger for what I've shared with you today. Go, man, sometimes I'm like that with God. Sometimes I'm like that with the people that I love. I think maybe they deserve more than that. So with background music, I want you to do two things. One, when you hear it, think about how forgotten it was and be sure that that's not the way things are with the people that you care about. But secondly, you might want to use this as an evangelism tool. I was getting my haircut just a few days ago, and I noticed like halfway through the haircut that there was music playing in the background, and I had not noticed. I'd been in there waiting to sit and had been halfway through the cut, and it finally kind of passively revealed itself to me. And so I asked the lady, this sweet lady, Amanda, who cuts my hair, I said, have you noticed the background music here today? And she's like, huh? Oh, yeah, I guess so. I said, I think sometimes we're like that with God. Like it's always playing. He's always there. We would say it's this constant that's all throughout the day. And yet sometimes we can get busy with so many things and maybe not hear him at all, or maybe not acknowledge, better terminology, that he matters. I wonder if maybe we could give him more attention than that, because I think, and I was telling her, I think that feels good to us to say, well, he's always there. But to him, maybe it feels like he's always there, but rarely seen. And so I started chatting with her a little bit about worship and setting aside time for God and really making him that first circle that everything moves through, which is really cool on a weekly cadence thing. Start Sunday with attention to God, worship towards God, and then let the rest of the week come after that and be fueled by it instead of living out the whole week, the whole month, the whole year without prioritized time for God, just assuming that he gets it, because I'm nearly certain that he doesn't. Anyway, that led to a nice conversation with her. She's so kind, and I hope she and her family comes and visits soon, and I hope that it matters to you as well. And so let me say just here at the end, summing things up, you've got to plan your day, your week, your life. Those first circles, what you put in them, where your focus is, those are the things that get the most attention, that will feel the most valuable because they are the most valuable. Where is God? Where is your marriage? Don't write it in some nebulous space up at the top and act like it's a part of everything. Where your mind is, where your heart is, that's where you are. With God, with your spouse, and with everything and everyone who truly matter to you, make them important. Make sure they feel it even more than you do, and may they never be resigned to background music. Thank you again for listening. If it's helpful to you, please consider sharing with a friend. Speaking of friends, I want to mention once again the sponsor for today's episode, Tyler Kane with Statewide Mortgage. They service Florida, Texas, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, Colorado, and Alabama. 20 years of experience. They can help you with home mortgage needs, whether you're a first-time buyer, refinancing, or just discussing future home ownership goals. Their website is in the show notes, or you can reach Tyler directly at 813-380-8487. He is a trusted friend and brother, and I encourage you to reach out to him. And in whatever you do today, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, excel still more.